morning, everybody. Bring me down a little bit. So, you having a good time so far here at Streamline? Of course you are. I can't see you anyway because I have the light straight into me. So it's kind of like I'm talking to myself again. That's all right. I do that a lot. So my name is Bennet Creed. I'm Vice President of Business Development for EAM Solutions, and I'm here with my colleague David Kinnamore, who's Vice President of our Services. And we are here to teach you about a little bit about work orders. Now, some of you may already know, and that's okay, because you can never stop going over the basics. Of course, today, as you can see, we're going to talk about some advanced concepts for work orders, generation, and scheduling. That's a mouthful. But what we're going to talk about is how to get past that reactive maintenance. Let you know a little bit about me. As they're calling it, I'm part of the DataStream Mafia. I was a manager for DataStream for about 4 years, and I managed their offices in Irving, Texas, and as well as later on in Irvine, California. So this is all I've been doing since 1997. For good or for bad, this is my life. And I have been all over the country as a consultant, project manager, helping with sales and general troubleshooting. So this is my world. So let's talk about who we are a little bit. EAM Solutions. We were founded in 2009. A lot of us came from DataStream and some other companies. We came together, and our sole purpose is, well, N4 EAM, Hexagon EAM, DataStream 7i, and whatever they're going to call it eventually. That's our world. And we've been doing this individually for our consultants 15 years plus each. We're headquartered in Birmingham. My office is in Dallas. We call it an office. It's a room with a French door on it. That's an office. And yeah, this is what we do. EAM, MP2, for some of you who might still have some facilities with MP2 out there. I hope not, because Windows 11 ends that really quick. And we are an active partner to Hexagon. And we work with the other partners as well. You know, we're very cooperative with the other service providers and with the salespeople. We like what we do. We like our people. We love our customers. And we are certified functional and technical consultants. We don't just make this up as we go. We actually try and study and figure things out. You've had those consultants, right? They come in and they just try and sit down and make it up as they go, like, I think it'll do this. One customer once told me there's a difference between, oh, and We like to be the, we'll figure that out. Not the Scooby-Doo reaction. So that's just a little bit about who we are. My theme here is the software working for you or against you. Couple of examples. I started my life in the IT world teaching WordPerfect for DOS. If anybody old enough to remember that, or Microsoft Office version 5, Windows 3.1.1 for workgroups. Yeah, that sends chills, doesn't it? One of the things that I learned over the years is people did not learn the tool. I was sitting on an airplane a couple of years ago, and I looked up diagonally from me, and there was a gentleman in a really nice tailored suit sitting with his laptop open with a spreadsheet, and he had a calculator, my clicker, and he was punching in numbers and going over typing in numbers to a spreadsheet. Punching things into the calculator, putting it into the spreadsheet. Took every bit of my will to stay seated and not get up and teach him how to use Excel. I used to teach Excel. I used to write manuals for Excel. What I see a lot of times too, and I see this even with my own consultants, and you know, we fight this, I'm going to create a table of contents for my Word document. Chapter 1, ... 3, enter. Chapter 2, ... You've seen this, right? But if you learn to use styles in Microsoft Word, you learn to format it. Then you just go in and you insert, say default table of contents. It does it for you. And you can right-click and update it periodically. And if you're really good, you can make your document start on page 1 instead of page 3. Yeah, that's where you start getting into section breaks and fun things like that. And the point of that is the software working for you when you're typing everything into Microsoft Word? No, you might as well have a typewriter. I learned to type on an IBM Selectric many, many years ago. That's basically what people use Word for, right? Or Excel. It's just a big calculator. It's just a simplified database. No. You could have it calculate your internal rate of return, which we used to do by hand, where you have to narrow down the value. No, you can have it do it for you. So, is EAM working for you, or is it working against you? What I've found over the years, and I never trust the screen, I always check. Excuse me. EAM is treated basically like a file cabinet. I'm going to issue work orders. I'm going to put them out there. Guys are going to do the job. The paper is going to come back. I'm going to open. Makes that sound. Close it back. Maybe it's an electronic file cabinet. And then you go to do reports. I was working with this plant in Ireland. I was privileged to be there. Had a great time. Beautiful people. I was fish out of water there. And they had a concern because the only way they were allowed to do their calibration reports was to print them out as PDF files and calculate them up with a calculator. And we helped them with, at that time it was DataStream 7i. We helped them with the calibrations module, if nothing else, just to record their values and be able to print reports out. And they just needed a little assistance. They knew what they were doing. They understood calibrations thoroughly. They just needed a little help. They didn't need the file cabinet. And very often what we see is people treat EAM like the file cabinet. I'm just going to write work orders. People are going to go do them. They're going to bring it back to me. And then we're going to assemble it in a spreadsheet using a calculator. And then what do you get? Oh, I found a problem. I was looking through my lists of data, and I need to create a follow-up work order. So you take the back half of that last paper work order that you got in, it's got the coffee ring on it, right? Oh yeah, if you've been in a maintenance shop, you've seen those. They're over there next to the purchasing agent's desk that has all the sticky notes, right? And I'm gonna look at it, figure out what they want, go over to EAM, sit down, log in, I'm gonna create a work order, go follow up, print. Is that really working for you? No, it's working against you. It's easy, but it's working against you. And that's kind of the heart of reactive maintenance, isn't it? I'm going to create work orders. Problems come up, I create a work order, we go do it. Maybe you get the work order. You're reacting to those issues that are coming up. Now, you've 20, 30 years, some of you have been using the system probably as long as I have, or longer, because you've used older systems before, like MP5. And you've heard this for years. You want 80% of your maintenance to be planned, 20% to be reactive or less. And that's a hard stat to meet. And you're like, oh, okay, Bennett's going to go through this thing all over again. Well, perhaps I am, because we need to hear that. That's where we need to be. We need better ways of getting work orders out there. We need the system to work for us and not against us. We need to have consistent work order creation, not this inconsistent. I was helping a hospital customer in Dallas once. The way they did work orders, they would print out a stack of them. Their maintenance guys would come by and flip through them and grab the ones they wanted and go do the jobs. Or they'd be walking down the hallway of the hospital, one of the nurse managers would come up and say, hey, Bill, this door's sticking. Can you fix it? Sure. Well, you get the job done, but you don't know who did it. You don't know what the problem was. You may have been sent over there and it was already fixed because a doctor came by with a little can of WD-40 that he should not have had and fixed the door. You don't know these things. You don't have any information. So you've got this inconsistent work order creation with reactive maintenance. Come on, Footlight. And all of that leads to your paper reports and your lists of data. My favorite report, I was working with a customer in Florida, and they had to generate this report on street cleaners, street sweeping. You know those big vehicles look like Zambonis that go down the street, clean them out. And this guy had this spreadsheet. He printed it out on, you know, that double legal size paper, those giant sheets. He needed to know which machine, how much water went into it, how much water was at the end of the day, what was the loss, what was the weight of the material they swept up, and there was several other water statistics there. And I remember this, the lady I was working with in IT looked at him and said, well, what do you do with this? Well, they told me several years ago I need to collect this data. Well, what do you do with it? No, I'm just doing it because I was told to. Every week he filled out this spreadsheet, how much water went in, how much water was left over. We don't want that kind of reporting. We don't want that kind of information. We want something that's useful, something that actually helps us make good decisions. But that was another example of kind of reactive maintenance. He's just reacting to what he was told years ago, but never asked the question, do I really need it? And in the end, you wind up with these wrong KPIs, these wrong metrics. You know, hey, I've got my KPIs for preventive maintenance to reactive is like 28%. Well, that's wonderful. What does that mean? Well, I don't know, it's 28%. You got to have good record keeping, and you got to start asking yourself the questions. And that takes us to the challenge. How do you get from, let me get my hands right, reactive to non-reactive, planned and event-based maintenance? The pattern you hear it called, maintenance 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, 4.0, whatever. Basically, how do you get yourself organized? How do you get yourself organized to where work orders come out when you need them with the least amount of effort to create them? Because if you have to manually create all of your maintenance records as you go, that's a lot of time spent. I tell maintenance departments, my job is not to put you in front of a computer to have you typing all day. My job is to make sure you're out there turning a wrench. You got to keep that bus running. That's customers. You got to keep that air conditioning unit running, because I live in Texas and we live and die by air conditioning. You know, we've got to keep the production equipment running. We work with a very large overland conveyor in West Texas, 64,000 rollers on it. The road has to roll. It has to keep going. So you don't need to be spending all your time in front of the computer figuring out what do you need. And you know what reactive maintenance, where it starts? Maybe you get a work request. Y'all get work requests? Somebody, yeah, it's great when you do. They actually go into Requester or now Mobile Requester. Or maybe you got something coming through call center for a service ticket. But a lot of times, the requests are kind of hit and miss. My favorite is, if I put the request in 6 times, the job's going to get done faster, right? Absolutely no. So, maybe you get some work requests in. Maybe you start creating work orders manually, right? You just create them as you need them. And what happens is you get uncaptured work. And what I mean by that, and you know what? I'm preaching to the choir here. Everybody sees this. There are things that get done that are never recorded. You don't get your problem failure codes put in there. You don't get your labor hours put in there because that's an important statistic. You don't get any downtime hours. You don't get the parts that you used. You're not seeing any trending. You don't get the inspection data in there. You don't get your meter readings in there. All that good stuff. You don't get your comments in there. There's uncaptured work because the goal of maintenance is to keep things running. It's a nuisance to put it in there. And what happens when you perpetuate that culture, you don't have any statistics. You don't have any information for your reliability because your data are not reliable. And you know, it's the old philosophy, if you see it, you fix it. My Uncle Homer, my great Uncle Homer, was a fixer. He worked for Cannon Mills in Kannapolis, North Carolina. They made thread, they made sheets, they made towels. When I was a kid, I didn't know you actually bought sheets and towels because that's what we always got the seconds. at Christmas, the ones with the runs through it. We thought it was great. And his job as a fixer was just that. He'd run all over the plant, he and his colleagues. That's what they did. Somebody tell him, hey, loom's down, I'll go fix it. Hey, threading machine's down, I'll go fix it. And he'd spend 8 hours a day fixing things, running around. If you see it, you fix it. But if you get a little more proactive with your maintenance, you can cut down on those emergent calls. You could put him out of a job. And then if they tell you, you think about fixing it. Because that's how maintenance works. If you bug them enough, they're going to make you a low priority. It's just human nature. So that's a challenge. But this is also the easy path, right? Marty Osborne, if you were here when he was talking about his book, he's talking about the lizard brain. And he's right. We're going to do what's easy. We're going to do what's simple. The path of least resistance is we're just going to go fix things, just like my Uncle Homer did. A true story, by the way. And just run around and get things fixed. And that's what he did. He followed the easy path. Everybody does. Because maintenance does not bring in product. But where we want to be is to have that automatic work order generation. We want to have work orders coming out on time intervals, or even better, meter and usage intervals. And this is where EAM starts working for you. Because as you're collecting this information, you're setting up triggers in the program, so work orders are created for you. The system works for you. And you start looking at schedules inside of EAM to see when they best fit. Now, you still have to fit them in with your production schedule. If you're in healthcare, you have to fit them around, say, surgical suites. If you're transportation, you still got to fit them around bus routes. You got to make sure you have backup equipment. It gets a little more complicated. But ultimately, when the system works for you and the system starts putting work orders together for you, then you start cutting back on that reactive maintenance. And that 80% reactive and that 20% planned starts leveling out. Because suddenly, I'm keeping ahead of the wear and tear on my equipment. I'm keeping ahead of the conditions that I'm monitoring. And then we start getting to your event-driven work order generation. Your monitored conditions. In the oil field, they have these LDAR detectors for detecting leaks on pipeline. So I need to be checking, how many parts per million is coming out, what's acceptable. Maybe I'm watching resistance, maybe I'm watching voltage, maybe it's corrosion, maybe it's pressure. It's something that I'm monitoring. It doesn't mean there's a problem, but it's indicating there can be a problem. You're predicting that something could go wrong. Now, you can send maintenance techs all around to collect these monitored conditions, and you can sit there with a calculator and do your trending. You can do your qualitative inspections, good, bad, ugly. But if you let the system do that for you, and you're working with other applications, if you've got SCADA systems, your PLCs, telematics on vehicles, BMS system, things that can provide you useful information, then you start getting work orders saying, well, it's not broken, but if you get to it now, we can extend the life of the equipment. We can keep it from breaking. Because we know what your product is. Your product is money, time, happy customers. Briefly worked with this big gym in Orlando. They measured everything based on how many people did not renew their gym membership. And if the saunas didn't work and the old guys sitting in the sauna didn't get their sauna, they left. They had to keep the saunas running. That's a lot of hot steam. You talk about corrosion and mineral buildup, especially in Florida, right? That was one of their metrics. How many people don't renew? Unhappy customers. And all of this comes back to one of my favorite tools, and I'm glad they made this. Basically, you get it in the product. That's your alert management. Because you can take that alert management and it can start listening for your data. And I know I'm preaching to the choir again here, right? You guys are probably already using this, but you need to take good advantage of this. You know, what are my trends? You know, in the inspections module, am I outside of my tolerances? Do I have an alert listening for that? And have that alert cause a work order to be generated that maybe is connected to a standard work order that's got a task list on it, preview for the head, yeah, spoiler alert there. Is that where we are? The alert management's great, and then you can have it send email messages to you. Oh, no, that's terrible, because then it fills up your inbox, you know. Getting the work orders is probably better. But we can have email messages go out. We'll just put really tight controls on it. And then, of course, key to that is you have to feed the beast, right? You've got to have incoming data. To get away from, if you see it, fix it, let your machines tell you what's going on. Bring that data into the system. Have your conditions set up there. Have your rules set up in EAM. Have those connected to your work order templates. And so when I come in on Monday morning, I can see, hey, this is indicating there's going to be issues. I put these work orders on the schedule between everything else. And we can help prevent a lot of that reactive maintenance. When you've got a maintenance department running around 9 hours active a day, and they're busting their tail, they're running hard, there's problems. When you've got guys that have time to sit and drink a cup of coffee, probably everything's okay. Now, I live in an ideal world, of course, and they know me there. But you want your guys to have some downtime because the equipment is not blowing up. Actually, it was funny. I was in a non-wovens factory outside of Charlotte. Their machines were built with a certain tolerance because there was so much dust in the air. They would spontaneously combust every once in a while. They have to go back through and they got rewiring down to like 3 hours on this machine. It's like, I think we can, that's an engineering problem there I think we can fix. So, but that's our challenge. How do you get from that reactive to that proactive, that event-driven? How do we get there? And the big question, of course, is what next? And this is what you have to decide, is what next? Of course, as we work as consultants with the software and with maintenance, we can make suggestions, but you know your equipment, you know your facilities, you know your people. And that's why you have to start asking questions. I tell everybody on any project, whether it's you're putting in a new ERP, whether it's you're redefining EAM, no matter what it is, start with good questions. You can't start with the process. You can't start with the software. Starting with the software is writing a book by sitting down in Microsoft Word and you just start typing. It's very organic. You know, Marty Osborne was talking about typing 250 words a day, which I'm a writer, so that's not a big deal. But after a while, it begins to meander. Unless you got a plan, you have to ask the questions. Where do I want to be? You know, where do we want our work orders to start? Where do we want our asset management to start? What is important to me in my organization? For some people, it's ridership on their transit. And we've done a lot of transit recently, so that's kind of top of mind. How do we keep ridership? How do I keep the cake line flowing for those specialty cakes? Not only do they keep flowing, they freeze properly, and they pass Q&A, and I don't have to have a recall. What's going to be triggering those work orders to help me keep up with that maintenance? What are my triggers for that? Is it going to be data coming in? Is it going to be work requests? Or is it going to be like my Uncle Homer running around fixing things willy-nilly? Which is a proper maintenance term, by the way, willy-nilly. So, then how can you simplify that process? Oh my goodness, David Kinnamore and I worked with this customer up in the panhandle of Texas. They wanted 16 work order statuses because they thought it was great. They could flow out all their work order process. They changed from this status to this status to this status, back over to this status. They thought, this is going to be terrific. And then the rubber hit the road. They went back and says, it's ready, it's open, it's on hold, it's done, it's closed. So how do you simplify that process? How do you keep it easy? Because again, our lizard brain says we want easy. We want the easy path. So we need a good process for that. And then how can you capture those events before the equipment breaks? How can you capture that? Now some things, like I picked up a nail on my tire the other day, that happens. These things, these emergent events happen. But I do know that I need to track when I need to change the oil in my car. I can help prevent my engine from seizing by keeping the oil changed. And that's the same example as with facilities equipment, production equipment, refining equipment, transit equipment. So once you ask these questions, what are the tools that you need? Don't start with the tools, start with the questions, because what you might find out is, I don't really need this particular EAM tool. It's not going to help me. It's going to work against me. But I do need this other EAM tool. So you have to define what the tools are, and we're going to talk about a sample list of tools. I'm not going to do a comprehensive list of all the tools in EAM that can work with you, because EAM is very dynamic in how you apply it. Then you got to understand the data you need that simplifies your workflow. What do you need to make things easier to flow your data? What kind of process do you need? Who's going to be handling things? And then document it, write it down. I've been places, the city customer I was with in Florida again, they said, we have 6 different types of work orders. I said, really? I was working with the IT manager there, Jennifer, and I sat down and said, see them. And they pulled them out. And we pulled out a blue highlighter and started highlighting everything that was in common. They had one work order. They just changed all their terminology. By the way, these were written in Sharpie and photocopied. That's what their work orders were. And so we were able to bring them together into a single work order form because we documented what they needed. And then we started documenting their flow. What happens from the point that you have a problem to the job is done, to you have a review process, do you have a follow-up? And then what do you do with that data? You have to have it written down. If it's not written down, you're not going to follow it. So many places I go, their process flow is broke no more. That was from Alabama. David's from Alabama, so I can pick at him about that. And there's a lot that goes on in that process. And you're not writing process for every little possible thing that could happen. You're writing a general process to give yourself some wiggle room so it's broke no more. And then you got to look at your technical tools for enablement. It could just be something as simple as I need some custom reports. I need the Equipment 360 screen showing me some widgets. Maybe I need to transfer to DataBridge Pro. We still have customers using N4 Ion, and they're trying to get off of Ion now and go to DataBridge, or even the REST APIs. We're helping several customers integrate their ERP with the REST API. But you got to look at the technical tools you need for enablement. You've got your Flex SQL. You now have Flex Python for helping to return values. The Text Studio is a really big deal. And the last step everyone forgets, test it out. So you started with the questions, you've identified your tools, you've looked at the data that you need and that you don't need, you've documented your workflow, you got your technical tools going, and you throw it out into production. No, go through it. Go through a mock session. Take your people through a conference room pilot. Just sit down and say, Bill, you're going to create a work request. Jane, you're going to approve the work order. Phil, you're going to actually issue parts. And see how it works for you. Always test, 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 test. I came through a lot of FDA-regulated industry, and pharmaceutical and medical device. Testing is everything. Test the process. Make sure it works before you release it. Otherwise, you're always going to be scrambling. Remember, the goal is to simplify how you create work orders. You want the system working for you, not against you. And so that takes us into the next portion of our little demo here. What tools are you going to use? And we're just going to do a brief overview because tomorrow we have a longer session where we're actually going to do a Stump the Consultant session for 3 hours. You are welcome to come in. We're going to be walking through these tools, other tools if you'd like, and talking about how these can work for you. And so, of course, the first tool I always look at is the new thing that came in, the dynamic checklists. Some of you are like me, you probably started with like MP2 or early MP5, and your PM instructions, your library of instructions were blocks of text, right? You print that block of text out on a work order. You have little underlines where you write things in or little check boxes. Well, now you've got the checklist, right, which was developed, I believe, for Pfizer originally, and was developed for the mobile device to where you could go through and check off that things were done. And then they added yes-no questions and drop-down lists and then qualitative answers. And then you could put in inspection readings and meter readings and have that update other parts of the program. Well, now they've got the dynamic checklists. A great application we've seen with this is like vehicle inspection. Is this good? Yes or no? If no, you have another set of questions to ask. You start getting into logical branching in your checklists. And that can also be part of the standard work orders. Now, everybody, I think, in here knows what a standard work order is. That's that work order template. But not everybody takes advantage of it because you got to build them, right? You got to sit down, take the time, and plan out what work order templates do you need. I see this a lot in facilities where they'll have one for changing a ballast in a light. You do it the same way every time. That's the thing that regulates the fluorescent tube. Hot, cold calls, plumbing calls, things that you do commonly and often. But you have a library of these standard work orders. Well, these standard work orders apply to other places in the program. It's not just I go to create a manual work order, I tack on that standard work order, it fills in things for me. We can use that as part of this automation. Of course, the checklists and inspections, but this is where we start getting into the operator checklist. Are you sending people around to inspect your equipment, to inspect your facilities? You may not need a work order. You know, I've got a chain hoist. I have to check that chain on that chain hoist every time I operate it. Before I start that CNC machine, I need to do an inspection on all the tools. Before I turn the bus on, I have to make sure everything is in order. Brake lights, turn signals, the horn, do I have a fire extinguisher? And if not, by law, I have to put an orange tag on it. So these checklists become important because these can trigger additional follow-up work orders to come out in the system. And I can take, inspection readings and have it update other parts of the program. And then we get into the mysterious maintenance pattern. What is this thing, right? It's a PM schedule on steroids, right? Where I can have repeated patterns for my planned maintenance. Planned preventive maintenance inspections. That's the simplest example is I have 3 tasks. Every month I do a different task. On the 4th month, I repeat the pattern. And it can be usage-based or calendar-based or both. Again, these can take advantage of those standard work orders, take advantage of those checklists. So when my work orders come out, they're already filled out. And they can come out automatically if they're usage-based or if we're using the alert management tool, because that can automatically release those planned maintenance orders. Again, working for me. Deferred maintenance is one that I like. It's one of those things people see as a hassle. I don't. I think it's a really useful tool. I've got multiple activities on a work order. I can't get to activity number 6 today, so I'm going to put it off into a parking lot. And then I can close my work order. When the parts come in or the weather conditions are better, I can take this activity out of my parking lot and put it on a new or an existing work order and come back and finish the job without having to keep other work orders open the whole time. That's very useful too if you're linking purchasing documents to your work orders. Because typically you can't close the work order until that item is purchased, right? So I'm going to defer that. Then, of course, your work order scheduling tools you may be familiar with. The work order schedule, the daily schedule, load balancing, and the one that should never be forgotten, the data spy, right? We've been using that for decades. But the data spy is great because it helps you search and sort and filter your data and give you different views of what you're looking for. That's still extremely useful. And for a lot of people, that's their primary scheduling tool, and that's great. So long as you're keeping up with your maintenance, so you can keep up with that asset life cycle. And finally, the DataBridge Pro, or the REST APIs, tying EAM to other relevant systems. And I say that because I have had customers that say, you know, it'd be really interesting if we had this come into EAM, like, how about the meter boxes on the buses? And it's like, what are you doing with them? Well, we can tie them to it. Well, yes, you could. What are you doing with it? Well, not sure. Yeah, let's not tie together systems that aren't relevant. But using DataBridge Pro, REST APIs, bringing data in on SFTP sites, that can help you out. Because suddenly you've got good data coming into EAM to help simplify your process. And now for just a brief overview of some of these things. We talked about your templates and tasks, the standard work order, coming up with a library of common jobs. Sitting down, taking a day or two, and planning out, what do you need? What are the common jobs that you have? Just making a list, then building those templates into your standard work orders. And associating those two events, and you can group them together by problem codes, which is really nice. So if I go to a work order that has a problem code of leak, it may narrow it down to just those certain items in my library. The task plans, of course. Of course, you can apply a task plan directly to an activity. You can have multiple task plans to a work order. And you can associate those with your standard work orders. So my work order starts filling itself in. It's got instructions filled out. It's got labor requirements. It may have vendor requirements if I need to buy outside services. All of that's put together for me. Oh, that's working for me. That's not working against me. So you need that library. It does take time. I'm not going to sugarcoat that. If you've ever done it, you've got to sit down and actually put some thought into it. And that goes back to step one, start asking good questions, right? You know, what do we need? Because you can overdo it too. And then you can associate those with your inspections and your maintenance patterns. So when your work orders come out, they can automatically be assigned to people. You know, my inspection readings are coming in. Maybe it's just temperatures. EAM records those temperatures. The alert management says, oh, that's outside the limits. Let's generate a work order. As a manager, I haven't touched the system. I've just got the conditions set up. As a maintenance guy, I look down at my smart device, and it says, you've got a new work order. Well, I wish it did have the pop-up. We need to work on that. But I can see that a new work order has been assigned to me. And it's indicating there could be an issue because it's getting a little hot. And it's already got some set instructions on it. It's already got my labor requirements. It may have tool requirements. So when I go and look at it, I know what I'm going to use. I know what I'm going to take out of the warehouse to go get the job done. That's the system working for me. And of course, the dynamic checklists and those inspections, those library of information, not just associated with work orders, but I need to send someone around. The most common one, I was just talking with Peter with CERN. They inspect 9,000 fire extinguisher cans, right? The 14 points on the fire extinguisher you have to look at. We want it done the same way. But with the dynamic checklist, now you can start creating some intelligence into these checklists. You know, I did have a problem with it. Now I've got a new set of questions to answer. I did have a problem with that 100-ton press, that steel press, the plastic injection molder, whatever it is I'm working with. I did have a problem with it. I just did an inspection. I'm going to record the information, and I'm going to have that system release a work order, a follow-up work order for me. And so you get these logical options on these tasks. So you do safety inspections, vehicle inspections, building rounds, chain hoist was a big one that we talked about, where I need to sit down and look at certain points to make sure this is operating properly. And then we could do release for follow-up work orders. And then you've got a history of all of that, because then you can go back and run your business intelligence tools and start doing your trending and start seeing, hey, I've got a root cause here. And then you can get into the root cause analysis tools in EAM as part of RCM, RCA and start digging through it, because now you have data to work with. Now you can start asking better questions. Everything starts with that question. Then the maintenance patterns. And we talked about this briefly. It's more than just scheduled maintenance. It's more than just a PM schedule. It's that recurring pattern of maintenance, and it can be automated using the alert management. Meter readings coming in, of course, are going to trigger them to release, but if they're calendar-based, time-based, yeah, they can automatically come out for you. And you know that every so many periods of time, you're going to get a work order. I've actually heard someone talking about this earlier this week about IT, certificates and software and things like that, things that need to be renewed. They set them up as maintenance patterns every year, every 5 years. Well, they're IT assets. That's clever. It's a good use of the tool. The automatic release to me is a big winner. Automagic is really good, right? Instead of me going in and running a generate command, or heaven forbid, sitting down and typing in a work order. We got to get away from that. Ultimately, we want to be closer and closer to event-based maintenance. Now, let me just say this. You're always going to have emergent work. There's always going to be something broke, and you got to go fix it. Because that's just the nature of maintenance. That's like me getting a nail in my tire. There's no amount of preventive maintenance that's going to keep you from getting a nail in your tire, especially if they're doing construction in your neighborhood. It's going to happen. But what we want is to build more intelligence into our scheduling. So we have these tools for integration, the REST, the SOAP APIs, DataBridge Pro. Some of you may still be using ION. That's great. You want to get that information in. The conditions on your equipment, the runtime, SCADA data, PLCs. Get that information in. And of course, you need a place to configure it, to put it in EAM, the inspections module or other modules. I like user-defined screens. We've had a lot of fun with those. We can do fun things with that. And you can, by the way, you can integrate, if you didn't know that, you can integrate to the user-defined tables in EAM. And you get that quantitative data, like your meters, your inspections information, maybe it's qualitative data, all your test results, and you set up the rules in EAM that when this information comes in, I need a follow-up. It may not be a problem, but it could be indicating there's an issue. So we can help cut down on those emergent work orders. The qualitative data is great too. It's good, bad, or ugly. I need someone to look at the equipment and determine, is this working for me? A long time ago, we worked at a shopping mall, and they did escalators, vertical lift. You've ridden on hundreds of those, I'm sure. It either works or it doesn't, but they needed to know how many times it didn't work across the year. They had to have that qualitative information. There is no halfway on an escalator. It's either working or it's not, forcing you to walk up these really uncomfortable stairs. And of course, key to that, I keep harping on this, is your alert management, where you can set up those alerts to generate the work orders or generate email notifications to let you know something's wrong. And the deferred maintenance, to where you can start planning out. I may have a complicated work order, but I can't get to everything because I need a particular part, or I need a contractor to come in, or there's a weather event. In Texas, down on the coast, hurricane comes through, everything pretty much comes to a standstill, especially in the refineries. So you get this parking lot for different activities on the work order. So I can get done what I need to get done, park those activities I can't get done now, and then bring them out of the parking lot later and recombine them. I could create whole brand new work orders, recombining activities for like equipment. And then finally, you need to be able to schedule. If you've worked with the scheduling tools, sometimes I will admit they can be a little frustrating in EAM, but they're getting better over time. But you need to do something. You've got to work with schedules. You've got to be able to see what's coming up. I need to know beyond 12 o'clock today what work is coming up because I've got a production schedule to meet. I've got a building that has to be open. It's on a campus. We work with the university. They have to have classrooms going or students can't meet, especially if it's snowing outside. Data Spy is a great place to start. You know, you get to that sorting and organizing, looking at who's doing the job, what's going to be worked on, start grouping it by dates. But then you get to the work order scheduling module. Now, if any of you have ever worked with MP2 back in the day, you know this tool really came out of MP2, where I can look at upcoming work orders by person, by trade, and I can click and drag and move activities around. And it color codes, so it lets you know when you're overloaded or when you're about to be overloaded on labor. And then you get to the work order daily scheduling. If you've never worked with that, the first time you see it, it'll scare the pants off you. Because you get this big screen with like, 50 or 60 search fields. Those of you who work with it, you know, first time you got to it, it's like, oh my gosh, what do I do? It's a little overwhelming. But when you look at it from the point of view that I can narrow down the groups of work orders I need to work with, when I can narrow down the equipment that I need to schedule, I don't have to do everything. You can run a what-if analysis on it. I can move things around on the schedule. I can assign activities to employees and look at how much time is taken up. I can look at what parts they need. And then look at it and go, this isn't going to work, and cancel the session without making any changes. Well, that's really, really nice. What-if analysis is very useful. It's one of the first things we used to teach when I taught Excel was a what-if analysis. And you can commit it. Now, when we do demos, we always lock down all the work order activities. I do not recommend that because you're going to frustrate the rest of your company. You know you're going to. You probably already have. And you have to, there's only so many people in the company that can deactivate a session. But what you can do is lock down just those groups you need. That deeper level of planning and scheduling. And finally, the work order load balancing, where I can see and move blocks of things around on the schedule. I can move around the work orders. Now, all of these tools we've gone over, we're going to go more in depth with tomorrow. So tomorrow's session is going to be 3 up to 3.5 hours of Stump the Consultant, which I highly recommend. What other chance do you get to nail down a consultant and start asking him the tough questions like, why didn't this work? How can it do this for me? I want it to flow this way. What are your recommendations? And we'll have David Kennemore working with you. I'll be there part of the time. David's going to be there the whole time. We're going to have a live EAM system. We have a demo system with some demo data with different kinds of data in it. You can stump us and start asking us like, hey, if you have this kind of equipment or this kind of vehicle, what can we do with it? And we like audience participation. We're going to be soliciting feedback from you guys or eliciting feedback. We want you guys to talk with us. So please sign up for it. And you can always contact us. We are here for you. We are EAM Solutions. And listen, you guys have been a great audience. I absolutely appreciate you being here and being here at Streamline. And we look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Thank you very much, everyone.